Tonight's podcast is 7 ways why egotistical arrogance is mind-made manipulation and illusion. Egotistical arrogance is never power. It's the mind impersonating power. It's the loudest mask the mind wears when it's terrified. You'll see through its programming. The high sonora desert frequencies dissolves the distortion and becomes impossible to ignore to open the door for you to soar, because the ego inflates itself never from strength but from fear, yet from fear, memory, and inherited scripts trying to control how you see yourself and how the world sees you. Arrogance is the mind's cheapest manipulating trick. It fabricates superiority to hide insecurity, invents certainty to avoid awareness, and builds an identity out of illusion so fragile they collapse the moment you stop believing them. What looks like confidence is just braggart conditioning in a costume. What feels like dominance is just the mind defending its own hallucination. That's what arrogance and ignorance are, is the mind defending its own hallucination. When you see it clearly, the whole structure dissolves. Egotistical arrogance is never truth. It's the mind protecting the illusions it created in its own comfort zone. Why mind-made egotistical arrogance and know-it-all ignorance destroys relationships. Egotistical arrogance destroys relationships because the mind prioritizes being right over being authentic, turning every conversation into a power struggle instead of a connection. Have you ever witnessed that in your life? I have witnessed that a whole lot of times, and I'm rising out of that as we speak. Arrogance blocks listening, it blocks empathy, blocks presence. The mind hijacks the moment with its need to be dominant, correct, and in control. The high Sonoran desert clarity, that authenticity hits clean. You can never connect with somebody who's busy performing superiority. Know-it-all ignorance destroys relationships because it shuts down curiosity, making the other person feel unseen and unheard and unvalued. The fastest way to erode trust and intimacy, ignorance ignorance masquerading as certainty, suffocates the relationship when the mind claims, I already know. It stops learning in the other person. It stops discovering them as you stop discovering yourself. It stops meeting them in the present. In the Sonoran stillness, the sabotage is obvious. Relationships dies when curiosity dies. Mind-made arrogance traps you in yesterday's identity, making you react from old wounds, outdated stories, and poisoning relationships with projection, defensiveness, and emotional immaturity. Arrogance is never confidence. It's unhealed history. Arrogance is never confidence. It's unhealed history. It's the mind replaying old pain, forcing others to pay for it. It's yesterday's muck drug in to today's connections. In the high Sonoran desert, ferocity, the authenticity is undeniable. You can never build a healthy relationship while defending a wounded ego. Why egotistical arrogance and know-it-all ignorance are the unrealized enemy within. and within people. Egotistical arrogance is the unrealized enemy because it convinces you that the threat is outside you, while the real sabotage is the mind's own insecurity, superiority, performance, and refusal to evolve. The ego points fingers outward so you never look inward. It hides its fear behind volume, certainty, and performance. In the high Sonora desert, the clarity, authenticity hits clean. The enemy isn't the world, it's the mind's need to feel above it. Know-it-all ignorance is an unrealized enemy because it shuts down curiosity and questioning, blocks growth, and traps you in outdated identity loops and speaking scripts from yesterday, making you fight life with yesterday's thinking, as I already know, is the mind's most silent self-attack. It kills learning, kills presence, kills evolution. So in the Sonora Desert, the sabotage becomes undeniable, and ignorance is never external. It's the mind refusing to update itself. Egotistical arrogance and know-it-all ignorance are the unrealized enemy because they disguise fear as confidence, immaturity as authority, and limitation as authenticity, keeping both me and you trapped in the smallest versions of ourselves. The mind protects its illusions by pretending their strength. It calls fear certainty, and it calls insecurity confidence. It calls stagnation truth. And in the Sonoran Desert level, veracity rips the veil open, and the enemy within is the mind defending the very illusion that limits you and me. 7 ways why egotistical arrogance is man-made manipulation and illusions. Egotistical arrogance is never power because egotistical arrogance is mind-manufactured defense mechanisms built from inherited beliefs, emotional snapshots, emotional alliances, and programmed identities. The mind inflates itself to avoid vulnerability, creating a false sense of superiority that manipulates perception and blocks being awake and aware. Ego is an inflationary illusion within us. Arrogance is the mind's ultimate manipulation trick, a survival-based illusion that convinces you your conditioned opinions are absolutely the right and the truth, shuts down listening, distorts reality, and traps you inside a self-protected narrative that has nothing to do with your actual intelligence or clarity. Mind-made clarity, mind-made and mind-made manipulation patterns. Why egotistical arrogance is mind-made sabotage. Egotistical arrogance is mind-made sabotage because the mind inflates a false identity to protect old wounds, blocking clarity, growth, and awareness by convincing you that you already know everything. That one was a big one for me to rise out of. Arrogance is never confidence. It's defensive programming. It's the mind manipulating you into staying blind so it doesn't have to evolve. In the Sonoran High Desert, clarity opens the distortion to be obvious. To understand, arrogance never elevates you. It traps you in your smallest self, in the smallest life you can experience. Egotistical arrogance is sabotage because it replaces perception with projection, making you react to your own insecurities instead of reality. which destroys relationships, opportunity, and inner clarity. The ego never sees the world. It sees its own fear reflected everywhere in the world. Arrogance becomes a shield that blocks truth, connection, and expansion. In the Sonoran Desert, the sabotage is unmistakable arrogance. It's never strength, it's insecurity wearing armor. Egotistical arrogance is mind made sabotage because it traps you in rigid identities, making you defend your mind made illusions instead of evolving, and keeping you locked in the same patterns that limit your potential and your scenarios of your dreams. The ego clings to certainty because it fears transformation and revelation. Arrogance freezes you in place, sabotaging growth by making you protect the very illusions that hold you back. In the Sonoran High Desert, ferocity, authenticity is clean. Arrogance is who you are. Arrogance isn't who you are, it's who the mind needs you to be to avoid change. How does the mind keep you locked in something destroying change? Why egotistical arrogance, know-it-all ignorance destroy your company's bottom line. I'm going to do a podcast on how egotistical arrogance destroys business. Egotistical arrogance kills profit because leaders stop listening, stop learning, and stop adapting, turning the company into a stagnant echo chamber where innovation dies and competitors eat your lunch. Arrogance blocks feedback. Feedback drives improvement. No feedback, no improvement, no revenue growth. Opening the Sonora High Desert wisdom, the authenticity hits clean, realizing arrogance never leads. It blinds and binds the mind as the blind leadership bleeds money. Know-it-all ignorance destroys your bottom line because it replaces data with ego, turning decisions into emotional reactions instead of strategic moves. When leaders already know, they stop checking facts, stop validating assumptions, and stop adjusting to market reality. So when you already know something, you stop everything. That's how companies overspend, miscalculate, mishire, and misstrategize. In the Sonoran Desert, the sabotage is obvious. That ignorance is never cheap. It's the most expensive mindset in business. Egotistical arrogance destroys culture, and culture destroys profit. Teams disengage, talent leaves, creativity collapses, and the company pays for it in turnover, burnout, and lost opportunity. Arrogance suffocates psychological safety. When people stop speaking up, problems grow in silence. When people stop caring, performance tanks. As the Sonora Desert veracity, authenticity is undeniable. Arrogance doesn't just hurt feelings, it drains revenue. Why mind-made egotistical arrogance, know-it-all ignorance, has a mind bind of I already know, shuts off everything fresh, flowing to fresh and listening. I already know reflex is a mind made arrogance that unlocks you inside old information, blocking fresh insight because the ego fears anything that might expose how outdated its identity really is. The ego clings to yesterday's knowledge like a life raft. It uses certainty as a shield to avoid being challenged, updated, or expanded. In Mesa, Arizona, high desert clarity dissolves the distortion that is unmistakable. The moment the mind claims it knows, it stops receiving. Know-it-all ignorance creates a mental chokehold because the mind replaces curiosity with assumption, forcing you to react to life from memory instead of presence, killing all freshness at the root. And if you open up to use fresh instead of new, say fresh, say new out loud, and then say fresh. Whatever you feel, you feel. Assumption is the ego's laziest manipulation. It projects old patterns onto new moments, turning every experience into a rerun. In the Sonoran Desert stillness, the sabotage becomes undeniable. Ignorance isn't the lack of knowledge, it's the refusal to let fresh insight flow through you to awaken you. The I already know mind bind traps you into yesterday's muck because the ego uses false certainty to avoid growth, keeping you stuck in the old interpretations and blocking the fresh signals and savvy and insights and connections that evolution requires. The ego fears the unknown, so it pretends to know. It freezes you in the past identity, past meaning, and past stories. So in the high Sonoran Desert, veracity, authenticity hits clean, fresh, that can never enter the mind, barricaded by certainty. Why mind-made egotistical arrogance, know-it-all ignorance, unknowingly keeps people stuck in ancestor survival mode programming and third world enslaving mindsets. The ego arrogance keeps you trapped in ancestral survival mode because the mind uses superiority as a shield to avoid vulnerability, growth, and awareness. Where do you see that in that life? I see that in my life yet today. Exact patterns ancestors used to survive never evolve. Arrogance is just an ancient fear wearing a loud mask. It's the mind replaying old survival codes. Defend, dominate, avoid exposure, avoid uncertainty. The Sonora High Desert clarity clears all the distortions from the obvious, dissolving arrogance because it's never evolution, it's inherited. Survival mode, survival reflex. And see, that's the thing about egotistical arrogance and know-it-all ignorance. It's all inherited from life. Know-it-all ignorance keeps people stuck in third world enslaving programming because the mind clings to certainty the same way oppressed ancestors clung to predictability, mistaken safety for stagnation. I already know is a modern version of never question, never risk, never change. It's the mind recycling scarcity era logic. Stay small, stay safe, stay predictable, avoid the unknown. In the Sonora quiet airwaves, the sabotage becomes undeniable, opens a way for me to understand egotistical certainty is the cage, ignorant is the lock. And my questioning and listening is the key to unlock the lock for me to fly away. Ignorance, know it all, ignorant, ego arrogance, know it all ignorance unknowingly recreates enslaving programming because they block fresh perception, fresh opportunities, and expanded identity, forcing people to live from yesterday's wounds instead of today's sovereignty. When the mind refuses fresh input, it defaults to old programming. Old programming equals survival mode. Survival mode equals limitation, fear, obedience, and inherited scripts. In the Sonora Desert, authenticity hits clean. The ego never protects you, It preserves the prison you're experiencing. Why egotistical arrogance, know-it-all ignorance is unrealized insecurity, immaturity, and fear. Egotistical ignorant arrogance is realized insecurity because the mind inflates itself only when it secretly feels small, using loudness, certainty, and superiority to hide the fear of not being enough. And that's one thing that egotistical arrogance does, is hide, I'm not good enough. And that's a lie. Arrogance is never confidence, it's camouflage. It's the mind overcompensating for unhealed doubt. Arrogance is the camouflage, it's the mind overcompensating for unhealed doubt. In the high desert, clarity, authenticity hits clean. The ego shouts only when the insecurity underneath is terrified of being seen. Know-it-all ignorance is unrealized immaturity because the mind refuses to understand and inspire fresh foresight, refuses to listen, refuses to evolve. The same emotional rigid ways of children use when they're scared of being wrong. I already know is emotional adolescence. It's the mind avoiding responsibility, growth, and humility. In the sonora quiet, the immaturity becomes undeniable. Ignorance isn't the lack of knowledge, it's a refusal to expand and grow up. Pick me. Egotistical arrogance, know-it-all ignorance, or realized fear because the mind uses certainty to avoid the unknown, unfamiliar, and the uncomfortable. Mistaking expansion for danger. The ego fears exposure. It fears expansion. It fears being wrong, so it hides behind arrogance and pretends it knows. As the Sonoran high desert veracity, as authenticity is unmistakable, arrogance is never strength. It's fear dressed as authority. Why the egotistical arrogance, know-it-all ignorance creates braggart leadership. Braggart leadership is born from insecurity disguised as superiority. The mind inflates itself with arrogance because it fears being exposed, so it performs confidence instead of embodying competence. The ego brags when it's empty. It boasts when it's threatened. It talks loudest when it knows the truth is underneath and is fragile. In the high desert, Sonoran desert, the pattern is unmistakable. Bragging is never leadership. It's insecurity wearing a megaphone. Know-it-all ignorance creates braggart leadership because the mind uses certainty as a shield, forcing leadership to pretend they know everything instead of learning, listening, and adapting. When the mind claims, I already know, it stops growing, listening, and expanding. When a leader stops growing, they start performing. Performance becomes a bragging becomes identity. In the sonora stillness, the distortion is obvious. Braggart leadership is never wise. They're terrified of being wrong. Ego arrogance manufactures braggart leadership because the mind confuses volume with mistaking self-promotion for strength, turning leadership into performance of superiority instead of fresh clarity. The ego believes louder is smarter. Flashier is stronger. Certainty is authority. Yet all that is all mind-made illusions. Sonora high desert veracity, the authenticity hits clean. Braggart leadership is just the ego trying to outrun its own fear. And where do you see that in your life? I see that in my life all over. And that's what I like about this. I get to do these podcasts to look myself in the mirror. When I look in my mirror of majestic intuition, I rise, shine, and energize my free flowing energy. Because the more I think and know, the less I go. The more I glisten. The more I question, the more I rise, shine, and energize my way of life. And I am Robert Wilson, and I want to thank you. And may your life be as blessed as you are a blessing to me in the world.